Hey everybody, this is Jeff, and I hope you're doing well. I'm here in cool Truckee, California, and I had a great training last night in Fallon. With some great people out there last night. And so, hey, I want to talk to you about last week we talked about recruiting, and I know some of you are still in that. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about recruiting, or I talked last week about recruiting. I want to talk about retaining those volunteers. So just as a review, as far as recruiting, you want to think about creating the right atmosphere for success. And is the club disciplined? Is it fun? And so on. Are you communicating the right message as you're recruiting? In other words, are you talking about what God's doing there? Or are you talking about all the chaos that's going on? I gave some tools. If you want to find out about that, scroll down in the Nevada group. And there's some things on there about tools that I use for recruiting. So now you've got this great team that you've recruited, and these people that want to serve in your Awana ministry. And so how do you keep them? I mean, if you keep volunteers, you don't have to recruit new ones every year. So first thing I'd like to say about recruiting volunteers is, are you recruiting them so that you can use them? Or are you recruiting that with them so you can partner with them? And sometimes we portray that we're recruiting people just for our deal. Really, that's kind of a hard issue. And so, or are you really recruiting them? Is there going to be more of a blessing to them than to you? So that's something you might want to check your heart in. And are you recruiting to use them, or are you recruiting really to partner with them to reach kids with the gospel? So, so the first thing you want to do is let them know what they need to do. So I made a list here. I have a written job description for every one of your team roles, and Awana's got some of that, or you can make your own. So have a written job description so your team knows exactly what they have to do. If they show up and you just say, well, help out, well, what does that mean? And so have a written job description of every team role. Do a training. You can either come to one of my trainings, or you can put one on yourself. And sort of how I would suggest you do that is grab the Awana Basics manual. You can see that in the catalog. There's a general session, and then there's a session for each club. So do the general session, and then have your club directors do a training for their leaders. And so that way, and you just tell the club directors, hey, if the club goes well, it's because you trained your people well. If the club doesn't go well, it's because you didn't train them well. So put that on them. And if it's the way they want to do it, then it'll be successful. The other thing you can do is provide some online training. Sometimes you can just send people to if you go to awana.org/basics, there's some online training for your people. So do a training so that people know what to do. And maybe you can do that every year for everybody. You can do it every year for your new people. You can do it every other year, but have a training. The other thing you might want to think about is, I call them KIT calls, K-I-T, keep in touch. So, and what I mean by that is the Awana ministry director every week should be calling their club directors and saying, and the way I used to do this would be, I would just call up our club director and say, hey, next week is Crazy Hat Night. Or I might call them, our club met on Tuesday, I might call them on Monday. Say, tomorrow's Crazy Hat Night. Is there anything you need from me to help, to make this a success? And just sort of take their temperature. Sometimes they'd say, hey, no, everything's great. We're good to go. I got all my stuff. Other times there might be some needs in there, and this gives you an opportunity to minister to those club directors. Then in turn, the club directors, so a Sparks director, TNT director, would call each one of their leaders every week, take their temperature, seeing how they're doing. And so the club director, hey, you're going to be teaching the Bible lesson this week, Bill, and I just want to make sure you're all set. Is there anything you need from me? You got the PowerPoints, you got all your props, you got everything you need. And so have to keep in touch. And then those leaders call clubbers and call parents every week. And hey, Billy, how you doing on your book? Are you working through your sections? Are you practicing every week? And so you develop this culture in a club where the real ministry happens not from 6 to 7:30 on club night, but maybe before club and after club. I used to tell people that the most important part of the meeting is the meeting after the meeting. So think about that. How it doesn't have to be, you don't have to spend loads and loads of time, but if you call people periodically and show them that you care about them, that's a way to draw them to the ministry. The other thing I put on there is I wrote, this is a list I wrote. You can ask your club directors to provide a written job description. We just talked about this a minute ago, but have the club directors write that out, because when they have to write it out, it causes them to think, what do I want my people to do? And so everything's very clear. Everybody knows exactly what they have to do. You can thank your team members continually. So you can do some do cards, some do text, some do little fancy gifts, some do you can send a Facebook message, video recording. There's all kinds of things you can do to thank your volunteers. And we used to do is Christmas time, we would get Awana Christmas cards, and we'd have our pastoral staff sign Christmas cards to thank the leaders. So when you're thanking your people, and then when you see them, when they come to your club starts at 6 o'clock, and they get there 5:45, hey, thank you, Bob, for coming. I appreciate you. And then when they leave, Bob, it's thank you. I can't even tell how much I appreciate you. So thank and appreciate your volunteers when they're thanked and appreciated for the stuff they're doing. Or if they have a rough night, hey, I know it was tough tonight, man. I just want you to know I appreciate and I value your contribution here. And tell them, hey, because of you, children are going to come to know Jesus. And so communicate that. Build community within your volunteers. So build community means, a lot of my close friends are the people I serve with in our Awana Club. And we camp together, we vacation together. I know their kids, they know my kids. And so I'm close friends. So build community with your people. Invite them over to your house now and then. Go over to their house. Have a potluck with everybody. In fact, when you do sometimes when you do trainings, years ago when I used to do when I was a Cubby director, I would invite people to my house to do our Cubby training. So we'd sit out on the back porch and we'd do our Cubby training back there, and we'd talk about them, and we'd talk about Cubbies for a few minutes, and then we'd enjoy the night. Judy would cook up some ribs. We'd have some ribs and some pie, and it was a good time. So the other thing I wrote on here on my list, stop losing volunteers by not empowering them to bring their ideas to the ministry. So if you have volunteers and they have an idea about how to do something, let them do it. If they have a great idea, hey, I think we should do some better songs. Let's do songs from here. Hey, how about if I bring my guitar in? What do you think about that? Don't squash their creativity. Encourage their creativity. Encourage them to contribute. And even if they have an idea about the way things should be done, and if you have an idea the way things should be done, as long as there's not some huge discrepancy, go with their idea, because then you're valuing them, you're empowering them to contribute to the ministry, and they feel part of the team. They're not just your tool, but they're really part of the team. So those are some ideas. I think recruiting and then just appreciating and building community with your volunteers. A lot of the people that I've served with over the years, we've just had them for years. We've got people in our club who have been serving for 30 years. It's because they're loved, they're valued, they're appreciated. They're not just there to do a job. They're there as a partner to do ministry together so we can reach kids together. So, again, hope you're doing well. For a lot of you, clubs going to be starting here. Some of you clubs started last week. I heard just today, by the way, they're still working on shipping. If you haven't got your stuff, it's going to be coming soon. I just talked to somebody just a few minutes ago, and they made an order a while ago, and they just got an email saying their order was on its way. So apologize for the late orders, but they are on their way. And if you need any help with that, let me know. So thanks again, and we'll see you down the road. Bye-bye.